It is such a pleasure to be joining you right here on ET Now. I'm Supriya Shrinate and this is the India Development Debate. Let's put the spotlight on the big business story that has continued to hog the limelight. The government seems to be hand-holding, it seems right now, the cash-strapped Jet Airways, which is really looking on a downhill road. We're picking up from sources that the process of securing substantial stake in the ailing airline has begun. The plan may prove to be a little too late is what some experts are saying. The question though is, should the government intervene? What is the way forward? Will there be a new team in place? Can the new team keep Jet afloat? Many questions there, and some of that will be answered by a stellar panel that's joining me right here on ET Now. I've got Jitendra Bhargav, former ED, Air India, BP Sharma, former ED, Bank of India, R. Jagannathan, editorial director, Swarajya magazine, and Hemendra Hazare, banking expert. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. And Jaggi, if I may begin with you, just about a third of Jet's planes continue to fly, and two-thirds have been grounded. The rest, like I say, have been grounded because of non-payment of dues. Lessors are procuring some of the aircraft that's grounded. Pilots have threatened to go on strike from the 1st of next month if the 3-month dues are not cleared. If funds don't come in immediately, the airline may default, and this is 4th time within 3 months yet again. Can Jet be saved at all from here on, or is it really headed the Kingfisher way? Jaggi?
Yeah. See, I think it is past the Kingfisher stage. I think unless you have serious policy changes, and the most important policy change is if you allow majority foreign ownership, it can quickly be saved, because a lot of people may be willing to pay the premium to buy a domestic airline with a reasonable market share and which can be grown. But nobody is going to take an airline if it has a minority stake, because a minority stake doesn't help any person with a lot of funds. So, and the thing is, the desk needed rescue at least 16 to 18 months before now. And the more you are delayed, you actually, this thing just, and the market itself doesn't seem to get it. You can't value an airline with negative net worth at 2,500 crores. You should actually be sold at 1 rupee. I mean, we are talking about lenders actually putting more bad money after good, and unless and until you give it to a really strong partner, nobody is going to buy it. You are just kicking the can down the road.
No, kicking the can down the road is perhaps the most apt description of Jet and what's happening right now. But before I go any further, Mr. Sharma, you've been a former banker, and if you can briefly answer a very blunt question that I may have. I mean, today we are looking at perhaps no options. The government has had to handhold. The question is, why should they do? But, before we go any further, what made India's lenders and some of these really big banks give Naresh Goyal such a long rope? I mean, shouldn't he have gone a long while back? Is it yet another case of the lenders being too lenient and acting when it is too late?
Well, so many infrastructure have come up in the country because of the lending by public sector banks. Something goes wrong subsequent to dispersal for factors not in the control of banks. It won't be a fair judgment to say that the lenders were not prudent. After all, we have the example of Kingfisher, and you see the other airlines, including Air India, all are struggling for reasons not exactly attributable to lenders. It is relating to market and other things. Of course, there may be some mismanagement in this company. I have no first-hand information. But to question the wisdom of bankers for having financed Jet, I think is not proper.
Okay, one should not question the wisdom of bankers. They have given Naresh Goyal a long rope. Today we are staring at a situation where they're perhaps left with no choice. Hemendra Hazare and Jitendra Bhargav, these questions are coming your way. And actually, Jitendra Bhargav, this one's for you. Is selling stake to take control by lenders the obvious last resort, and especially after Etihad and Jet have failed to iron out their differences? The airline is obviously in desperate need of fund infusion, especially after the meeting between Etihad CEO Tony Douglas and SBI Chief Rajneesh Kumar failed to arrive at any solution. People believe it has to be kept afloat. I mean, how is it going to be done? The only solution seems to be that the lenders, take substantial stake in the airline.
You see, lenders' proposal for acquiring a majority stake is high on optimism, low on realism, and one can see a fiasco in the making. You cannot have the lenders find a team, or for example, where are the people available? That would be my blunt question. Most of the Indian carriers are being operated by either foreigners or expat Indians with aviation background that they had abroad. Now, where are they going to assemble a team? Now, if they are going to be relying on the bureaucrats, I'm sorry, Air India example is a sore example in front of us that they will not be able to manage. And let's not also forget that on the Jet Airways board, there were two former civil aviation secretaries, Mr. Ashok Chawla and Asim Zaidi. Now, they have not been able to contribute anything worthwhile. So, for banks to say that we will put in more money and we will put it on track and then, like the Satyam, sell it on and recover the money, I don't think it's a doable thing. It's realistic. There has to be some other thing. Plus, if you were to get it, take today's situation where Jet is, you got 70 aircraft on ground. Will the government regulations allow fast-track decision making? There will be problems on board. There is the vigilance inquiry people will be fearing, or I wouldn't know whether it is just a ploy to let the 2 months go by of the election time so that Jet Airways continues. And I'm surprised that we don't even hear of Naresh Goyal or the management on what they are doing. Something they must be putting in public domain, or lenders have just kept them aside and said, we have taken over from today and it will be our bidding and we will take all the calls on behalf of Jet Airways. So where does that 8,000 crore, which is with Jet Airways, to the banks, how will they come back? How will it come back to the banks?
Jiten Bhargav, give me a minute. I think you raised an important point there, that one doesn't know what this management is telling people. I mean, it almost seems to be a chat happening between the government on one hand and the lenders on the other, and that raises the next important question, which I want Hemendra Hazari to answer. The government has asked banks to save Jet to avoid bankruptcy. Government has also nudged its 49% owned NIIF to buy a stake. This was reported by Reuters. This is not our information. Now, how can banks evade this sort of a pressure? Why should the government get involved at all? That's one part of the argument. And the second part of the argument is that can the government not get involved? Can the government at all allow a casualty like Jet before elections?
I think the issue first is this company has been insolvent now for, I think, for the last 4 to 5 years. It has negative equity. So I think one thing is very important to realize, that the equity value should be gone down to zero. Now that can happen if the case is referred to the NCLT, and where the equity owners, all of them, their value is written off totally. And then you can get some new promoters, whether it's a foreign airline or whether it's the Tatas, we have to see. But one thing is very clear, that these equity holders, they don't have a right to exist, because their whole net worth has been wiped out, and therefore it should be, they should be given out at the earliest. And therefore I think the only viable option that we can see today is that if the matter goes to the NCLT and they decide, and the banks also therefore are off the hook, because most of these matters banks anyway don't like to take any decisions. Because of fear of any CBI inquiry later on. So I think the best solution could be that it goes to the NCLT, and that the NCLT then decide and get a new owner to come in.
I mean, not that NCLT has been very fast in all of this, but just a quick question then to Jaggi. And Jaggi, Jet is no Lehman Brothers. It is not as if it's going to have a catastrophic effect and everything else, and it's going to be this contagion fallout. It is no Lehman Brothers, which is why you don't need to pump in public money to save it. Is this arm twisting of public sector banks? And when will this temptation to save private companies through banks really stop? Why should, like Hemendra Hazari and everybody else seems to believe, why should Jet not go to insolvency? Is it the government's job to interfere in the functioning of a private airline? What about a free market that should ideally take care of this condition?
Actually, there is only one reason why Jet is being kept on indefinite life support by being promised this rescue and that rescue and the banker stepping in, and that is politics. I think in an election season, no government wants to be seen as allowing a major airline to fold up. and you have hundreds of people getting unemployed and coming up on TV and saying my dues have not been paid and this has not happened, that has not happened. And then of course Rahul Gandhi coming and saying, oh look, he is favoring Jet, he has written off 8,000 crores of this airline. That is the only reason why Jet is not going to the NCLT. Actually, it is a fit case for NCLT, and probably around 2,000 crores of the 8,000 crores can probably be salvaged. But the banks are not yet ready for the haircut, and the government is not willing to say that with this money, this is going to be written off right now. So it's pure politics that's keeping Jet neither dead nor alive. And unfortunately, the longer you do that, it will be more dead than alive.
Mr. Sharma, banks are not going to NCLT, and do you believe somewhere there is a concern that a long-drawn insolvency process, like we've seen in many other cases, is not going to throw up solutions? Is there somewhere a concern that this may lead to some more value erosion? Is there somewhere a concern that bankers are still not as comfortable to go to NCLT and to insolvency as their first resort?
NCLT is probably the last resort for a lender. It is in the interest of lender that the organization is helped to survive. That is not only in the interest of that promoter, it is in the interest of the employees who are working there, other stakeholders. Having told that, I do agree with my two colleagues that banks should not finance further unless there is a solid revival plan on the table. Even otherwise, the core job of a lender is to lend, not to run an entrepreneurship. The bankers are not competent to run airlines, not at all. So converting the loan to unsecured investment is something should not be resorted to unless it is a very extraordinary situation. There are special reasons and there is a quick time frame to monetize this investment. In the absence of these three, which I feel it is not there, converting the existing loan to equity probably will be risky. The banks are cut in a difficult situation. Going to NCLT will yield result when there is net worth. As they have already told, the value of the share is not the worth, the paper on which it is written. If it can be revived, maybe by chipping in other airlines, so that in a long-term view, banks can recover their money, will be definitely a better idea than going to NCLT, close down the Jet Airways,
Okay.
And the lenders may go for a big haircut.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Sharma, hold that thought there. It's an interesting point that you say that, banks are supposed to lend. That's their core job. Their core job is not to run an airline. Mr. Jitendra Bhargava, I'm going to come to the brass tacks of this sale and what's really happening right now. Jet, which has reported 3 consecutive quarterly losses of over 1,000 crore each, has about 8,050 crores in debt as on 30th of September. But the airline does fly to 20 countries. It has a code share agreement with about 20 airlines. It's got a brand. It's got loyal customers. Why are no other airlines showing interest at this stage? Is there absolutely no sense for them to show interest? Are they waiting for things to get worse for a better bargain? What do you believe is happening here?
We must make one point very clear here. And that is that unlike a manufacturing unit, it's an airline we are talking about. And an airline is known by the market share it commands and the routes it operates to. Now, and this is one statement of SBI chairman who made which was made yesterday was that we would keep the organization going, and that is where the survival wins. And I agree with that statement. Because if you were to take a decision after the remaining 40 aircraft also are put on ground, the market share becomes zero, the value also becomes zero, and it's difficult to sell the airline therefore. So some bit of intervention of banks is critical at this juncture. But the question, as I said, raised earlier was, how do you take it forward from here? Now, that is where the point comes in here. Now, as regarding the interest, we all know that Naresh Goyal couldn't get money. Okay, there could be a money constraint with him. Etihad was not keen to up its stake in the airline. And there are nobody coming because, as I've very often said, it's the market dynamics of Indian aviation industry that comes into play. Now, you cannot say that a full service carrier will be able to generate profit in the coming 6 months, 1 year from now, because the market that we have at the moment, price sensitive market, you cannot change the psyche of the Indian passengers. You got low cost carriers who are commanding a majority of the market, and the fares that the service carriers like Air India, Vistara and Jet Airways command is only marginally higher than what Indigo charges for flying to any sector. So if you cannot recover your cost of operating, of generating a seat, how do you make profit? So if you cannot be making profit, why would anybody put in money? And that's my question to the banks. If you are going to put in more money, what guarantee is that you will be able to not only ensure the safety of this money that you're putting in, but be able to recover what you've already lent to Jet Airways? Now, these are issues that banks need to understand, need to examine and get professional expertise. I don't think our banks have the requisite expertise as far as the aviation sector is concerned. We all know that it was SBI Caps who made the turnaround plan bailout package of 30,000 crore for Air India. Did we achieve the desired results? A big question mark.
Right. Okay, fair point. I don't think results are achieved on paper. It has to be achieved in practice. Hemendra Hazari, lenders want a management change, but aviation history has seen very, very few success stories on that front. And apart from Indigo, which was all right to begin with, and the revival of SpiceJet, there are seldom happy moments in aviation. How easy will it be for the lenders to find a suitable replacement? And it's well established that lenders can't be running an airline, and they will need management to be replaced. You know, the kind of composition should there be? There is already chatter that should you get Air India X guys, it's not as if it's a great success story to replicate here. What do you believe are the options before banks right now?
See, it is going to be a long and difficult road for banks because they are faced with either 100% write-off on their loans, or a substantial haircut. Now, it's between the devil and the deep blue sea. As I said earlier, because from the newspaper report it seems that none of the foreign air carriers were interested because of Naresh Goyal continuing to be there. So I think it is imperative that the government and the banks they get his exit at the earliest and give some confidence to any other party who wants to come in. I'm sure at a particular price, they will all come in. At some price, they will find it attractive because it does have some market share. It does have roots. But every day you procrastinate, the value of the whole enterprise keeps falling. But I think it is imperative that Mr. Naresh Goyal be, made to leave at the earliest, because then only I think things can go forward, and therefore the government's assistance is required for that. Now, if it were to go to the NCLT, then it happens very quickly. Of course, there also some time is taken. But I think outside the NCLT process, I think banks are going to find it practically very difficult to take over, manage it, then what do you do with the other shareholders, because as it is, the shareholding value today is zero. So it is going to be, whatever action you take is going to be a long, arduous process. There's no quick fix solution for it at the moment. And the worst case, of course, it will turn out to be a kingfisher.
Oh yes, it's turning out to be a kingfisher, and many will turn around and say that Mr. Malia was charged for using political influence when he got loans from IDBI despite a very negative sentiment and environment. Then how is the situation different today? You are inducing banks to kind of lend to them. But Jaggi, India's civil aviation sector, many people believe, has emerged, as one of the fastest growing industries during the last 3 years. We've become the third largest domestic aviation market in the world and is expected to overtake UK to become the third largest air passenger market by 2020. But what continues to ail our aviation sector? I mean, worldwide, I know aviation is not the safest sector to be in, but we've had Kingfisher, then we had SpiceJet, which was sold, revived. We've had Air India, now Jet Airways. There's got to be something really wrong at the root of India's aviation sector. What could that be?
Three factors. First of all, we don't really have low-cost carriers. Most of the cost is fuel and this thing, and the only person who's managed to crack it to somewhat is Indigo, which has managed to get lower cost factors on all its parameters. The second thing is all our infrastructure related to things, whether it's airports or landing fees and all, are very, very high. So you're not going, there's no way you're going to do. The third thing is, we've got the wrong guys entering aviation. For example, if former travel agents like Jet Airways and East West got into running an airline, basically they thought that if their cash inflows are higher than cash outflows in terms of expenditures, then they're okay. But they forgot one simple thing. The minute it's a 2 to 3% kind of margin business where volumes are very important. So if you do not have a large amount of equity which will help you navigate the time when fuel prices suddenly go through the roof, then you cannot stay in the business. So you cannot, it's wholly dependent on having fuel prices at a very low rate so that the income marginally outpaces the expenditure and you somehow stay within cash flows. So they've got their fundamental business logic wrong, and unless people with very strong equity bases who can manage 18 months, 2 years of high fuel prices so that you can keep cutting your costs, those kind of guys are not coming in. The guys with very low equity are getting into this business when it's a very long-term business. 2 to 3% margins need very big equity. You need huge volumes, long periods of time. So the wrong guys have got in.
Right. Okay, so at the heart of the problem seems to be the wrong guys have gotten, the business models are very skewed. 40% cost of operations is air fuel, and that is extremely expensive here in this country. We do hope that the government is going to be listening to it. We can't afford another casualty. But yes, the government doesn't need to come in and save Jet Airways. If it's an airline that needs to go under, it must. We must not throw good money behind bad. Of course, there's going to be collateral damage. There are going to be job losses, and perhaps that's exactly what the government is wary of in an election year. But let's keep our eyes very, very close to the ground, or actually close to the skies, all pun intended, as far as Jet is concerned. It's been a pleasure bringing you the show. Thanks very much, Mr. Sharma, Hemendra Hazare, Jiten Bhargav, and of course, R. Jagannathan for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather, we talk pure politics, and we talk about who has the political narrative, has the opposition lost it in the last 2 weeks, and more importantly, who's winning the allies game. We come back in an exclusive conversation with Yashwant Sinha, India's former Minister for Finance, right up ahead.